You're definitely unmuted. Mhm.
Good morning, everybody. We set aside this time for brief announcements that will be of interest to our community and friends. Please be succinct when announcing upcoming events or updates. If you have an announcement, please raise your hand. When when Andy or I call on you, come up to the podium and unmute yourself and then speak.
So we need some volunteers to help write postcards. Marilyn Feeble-Corn got the Get Out the Vote postcards, and they need to be mailed on October 14th. And it's not telling people who to vote for, right? But begging people to get out the vote. And so we need at least 8 people. More would be better. We're going to meet here on October 2nd, Thursday at 11 a.m. So please come out, and there's a little blurb that exactly you're right, and you don't put anything extra in it because they're trying to understand exactly, what helps people get out the vote. So again, 11 a.m. Thursday, October 2nd. Thank you.
So good morning, I'm Andy Fagan. I'm here to just remind everybody that right now we're in the midst of the Jewish high holidays, the most sacred time in the Jewish calendar, centered on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Rosh Hashanah begins the 10-day period of reflection known as the Days of Awe. It's a time for self-examination, prayer, and seeking forgiveness from others. Traditions include attending synagogue services, hearing the shofar. We used to have someone blow the shofar. He's not here this year. And festive meals with symbolic foods like apples dipped in honey for a sweet new year. And then the period culminates with the holiday known as Yom Kippur, which begins, I think, this coming Tuesday night at sundown, otherwise known as the Day of Atonement, the holiest day of the year for the Jewish religion. It's observed with fasting, intensive prayer, and confession, focusing on repentance and reconciliation with God and with people. Together, they emphasize themes of renewal, repentance, and moral responsibility. Thank you.
I have an announcement. This year, October 11th and 12th, and the following weekend is the yearly Open Studio Arts Tour that takes place in SLO County. And I'm participating this year, again, only the first weekend, October 11th and 12th, which is a Saturday and Sunday. So I welcome you to come by. You can find my address in the directory. I'm afraid I forgot the flyers, but I will bring them next week, and there'll be catalogs around town for all the artists throughout the county. Next week, Mary Ann Anderson will be here in person to present Leap of Faith, Finding Your Place in the World. Let us now take a moment to still our hearts, quiet our minds, and center ourselves. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lit the flame within us and the community. Laurie will light the chalice here in the sanctuary. Before we sing the first hymn, let me remind our remote participants to leave yourself muted. However, we want you to sing, and we want you and whoever is with you to sing with us as big and as loud as you like. Make this a joyous experience. Please stand, embody your spirit, and sing the opening hymn, "The Morning Hangs a Signal," number 140.
This is an unfamiliar hymn, so I'm going to play it through once. You follow the lyrics and I'll play. Follow the bouncing ball. The morning hangs a signal upon the mountain crest, while all the sleeping valleys in silent darkness rest. From peak to peak it flashes, it laughs along the sky, till glory of the sunlight on all the land shall lie. Above the generations, the lonely prophets rise, while truth flares as the day star within their glowing eyes. And other eyes beholding are kindled from that flame, and dawn becomes the morning when prophets love proclaim. The soul has lifted moments above the drift of days, when life's great meaning breaketh in sunrise on our ways. Behold the radiant token of faith above all fear. Night shall release its splendor, that morning shall appear. Nice.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Community of Cambria. We're glad you joined us today. Our UUCC sanctuary sits on land that the Salinan and the Chumash indigenous peoples historically inhabited. We honor their contribution to the region and give thanks for the opportunity to gather in faith on their unceded territory. Let us respect their legacy and protect their history as we occupy this sacred space. As Unitarian Universalists, we celebrate religious diversity and welcome all who journey in search of faith and spirituality. The UUCC is a lay-led congregation run by the democratic process. We invite speakers from different religious traditions and spiritual or scientific backgrounds, as well as community leaders to speak at our pulpit. We encourage presentations covering a variety of topics and areas of interest that connect us with the UU 7 principles and 6 values: equity, transformation, pluralism, generosity, justice, and interdependence, with love at the center. Today's service centers around the second principle: justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, and the seventh principle: respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. My name is Margot Biggs, and I am your worship associate for this morning's service. Good morning. I would like to extend a special welcome to today's guests and visitors. We're glad you joined us this morning. If you wish, please introduce yourself or your guests. Okay.
My name's Craig Penner. I've been city clerk for about 4 years now.
Oh, welcome, Craig. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, hi, I'm Norm. I live in Morro Bay. First time here, and I love Cambria. Any excuse for not here.
Well, come again. Is there anybody else? I don't see anybody else. If you're not on the mailing list, please visit the UUCC website at uuccambria.org so that we can keep you informed about all of our activities. Members and friends, please check out what's happening, the e-blast sent to you every week. This is a great way to keep up to date with our latest news. To see this or any of the past Zoom services, the recordings can be found on the UUCC website. So again, good morning and welcome to everybody. The affirmation is both a recognition of the nature of this community as well as a promise to which we aspire. Let us recite the affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great commitment, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and help one another. Joys and concerns is a time for sharing. If you wish, you may come forward and briefly express a personal celebration, sorrow, reflection, or gratitude. The collective flames of these candles embody all of the joys and concerns which may have gone unspoken today, but are also deeply felt in this community. Today's first reading is an excerpt from A Sense of Wonder by Rachel Carson. A child's world is fresh and new and beautiful, full of wonder and excitement. It is our misfortune that for most of us, that clear-eyed vision, that true instinct for what is beautiful and awe-inspiring is dimmed and even lost before we reach adulthood. If I had influence with the good fairy, who is supposed to preside over the christening of all children, I should ask that our gift to each child in the world would be a sense of wonder so indestructible that it would last throughout life as an unfailing antidote against the boredom and disenchantments of later years, the sterile preoccupation with things that are artificial, the alienation from the sources of our strength. Let us now enter a place of peace and serenity where you are one with your spiritual being. Be at peace within your space, where the absence of all that is temporal is its most cherished gift. Let us enter the stillness. Light, shine in. Illuminate our inward view. Help us to see with clarity. Shine bright and true, so we may join our songs in new sounds that become full symphony. The second reading is an excerpt from the Buddhist Metta Sutta. May all beings be at ease, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none, through anger or ill will, wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downward to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. Please stand and body your spirit and sing When Our Heart is in a Holy Place, number 1008.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our hearts stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
Today's talk is titled Looking Both Ways, to be delivered by Reverend Ken Reed Brown. Reverend Ken Reed Brown is Minister Emeritus at First Parish in Hingham, Massachusetts, the Old Ship Church, having retired in 2022 after 35 years as minister there. Ken lives in Hingham with his wife, Susan. They have 3 grown and married children and 8 grandchildren. Ken earned a BA in philosophy from Haverford College and his mastery of divinity from the Starr King School for the Ministry in Berkeley, California. He currently serves as co-chair of the Interfaith Committee, which organizes the Listening to Other Voices speaker series at Glastonbury Abbey in Hingham, and on the Communications Committee and Coordinating Council of Elders Climate Action. And here's Ken.
Well, thank you, Margot, for that kind introduction. It's awfully good to be with you again. I was doing the math. I think it's been 5 years since I started addressing you, being with you a couple times a year. Began that back in the pandemic. You remember that, when you went onto Zoom services only. And it's always been good, always been wonderful to be with you in this way. I wish a continent didn't divide us, but there you have it. The miracles of modern technology bring us together. Thanks to everybody who makes it all possible. Andy today and Randy, otherwise Julia, and our musicians. It's just quite wonderful the way you put it all together in this way, and I appreciate it. Once again, it's good to be with you. Now, we were reminded earlier of that we are in the midst of the High Holy Days on the Jewish calendar. And so I won't be speaking directly about the High Holy Days. You heard a good message earlier. And I consider this sermon really to be a sermon that invites, certainly for me, and maybe for you, reflection on how we've been living our lives and how we might move forward to live our lives in the days and the year to come, which is what Jews are invited to do each year, and we can certainly benefit from that too, whether or not we are Jewish. Looking both ways. Many years ago, in our Old Ship newsletter, I've been going through my old newsletters, and every newsletter, whether it was weekly or monthly, I had a musing column, and sometimes about events going on in the world, sometimes about Unitarian Universalism, sometimes a little more personal. Well, quite a number of years ago, my musing consisted of this, of a reflection, something like this. It had been a beautiful morning earlier in the week, that week, and I went for a run, as I do on many mornings. A bright sun, blue sky, it was quite lovely, and I ran up, there's a road, it takes about 2.5 miles from here, my home, to get to the top of something called Turkey Hill here in Hingham. And at the top of Turkey Hill, it's a conservation property. It's just a splendid view. You look kind of straight, more or less straight east, and you can just see a little bit of the Atlantic Ocean over the trees. Look towards the rising sun over some woods. Look more or less northish, northwest, and you can see Boston. Well, I got to the top of the hill and I needed a breather, so I took a breather running up that hill, but it was also a time just to look, to take in the view. I looked out towards the Atlantic, over the woods, just splendid morning. And then I looked back to Boston, and it was one of those days, as it happened, when an ugly brown orange smog had settled over the city. Not a pleasant look. Now, had I chosen some other route, we have about the same distance away in a slightly different direction. There's a state park, Wampatuck Park, and I could have run into the park. No hills, no expansive views, just I would have been embraced by the beauty of the woods through which I was running. Maybe I've seen a couple of deer, which I do in there sometimes, and blue sky through the woods and sunlight filtering in. It would have been beautiful. But that hadn't been my choice. Instead, I'd run up to the top of Turkey Hill, and I was presented with a more complete picture of the day, you might say. Having looked both ways, a more complete picture of the day, and by extension and metaphor, you may already be thinking this way yourselves, a more complete picture of our lives through the metaphor of looking both ways. It's not always easy or welcome to look both ways in this regard. But just as it's a matter of safety, we know this, as we're about to cross a busy street, to look both ways so that we see what might be coming. I would suggest that in a real, if slightly different sense, it might also be a matter of a certain kind of safety to look both ways in our lives, to take in both the beauty and the ugliness, happiness and sadness, joys and sorrows, the good and the evil. One of our hymns, number 17 in the Gray Hymn Book, if you want to take a look, it quotes the poet William Blake centuries ago to make this point. I'll read it. Every night and every morn, some to misery are born. Every morn and every night, some are born to sweet delight. Joy and woe are woven fine, clothing for the soul divine. Under every grief and pine runs a joy with silken twine. It is right, the poet goes on, it is right, it should be so. We were made for joy and woe. And when this we rightly know, safely, there's that word again, safely, through the world we go. Now, we surely might want to argue with Blake's assertion that, as he put it, it is right, it should be so. But there is no denying that it is so. And what if we understood at a profound level, really took it in deeply, that joy and woe are indeed woven fine, that life brings unavoidable sorrow and suffering, too often far more to some than others, and that life also brings a measure of joy, though far too little. We know this too, for some. What if we allow ourselves to accept the fact that this is the nature of life? Well, it seems to me that accepting that life comes with both joy and woe, and that we are not exempt from the woe. We may be more likely to live with greater equanimity. I love that word, equanimity, which is a sort of safety, I think, isn't it? As through the world we go, to use Blake's words. Not to mention be readier with empathy and understanding and compassion that comes from accepting the fullness of life, that we're all in this together, and therefore better be able to be among the helpers and healers in this world of ours. In this regard, I remember something my father said to my brother Jim years ago. We were youngish, maybe in our early 20s, something like that. And Jim had brought some trial, some difficulty that he was going through to my dad, and Dad said to Jim, "Welcome to the human race." the nature of life. Looking both ways then, a matter of safety, it seems to me, whether on the street as we walk or in our lives as we live. But isn't it oh so human to want to dwell only on the beauty and love and goodness in the world? All too human to be drawn only to comfort and ease? Of course it is. I, for one, certainly love the beauty of a perfect fall day. We're having a lovely day here in Hingham. I don't know what it's like there. It's a little warmer than usual. Blue sky. I can hear, maybe you can hear the birds outside too. A splendid day. And I love the beauty of a perfect day as much as anyone, along with moments in any season that evoke what Rachel Carson calls that sense of wonder. That sense of wonder that we lose as we get older at our peril. But we can keep it alive. We can be our own good fairies, to use her language. So I love a beautiful day. I treasure my time with those I love. I enjoy a good meal. I savor my favorite tea every morning after breakfast as I read the sports section, if it's gone well for our Boston Red Sox. And then perhaps I read something else as I continue to sip on my tea, maybe one of my favorite old texts. And much of this, I expect, I feel I share a kinship with most of you. It's human. I think I feel a kinship too, I know I do, with hobbits. Do you remember hobbits? From Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and his first book, The Hobbit. Most of you may be familiar with them, a few of you may not. I'll say a little bit then. I'd read the entirety of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings to our son Adam. Oh gosh, must be 30 years ago or so. We got through the whole thing, and it took us a number of years. We took some breaks, but we got through the whole thing. Now, I read it again this summer. I was moved to reread The Hobbit, and then kept going through the whole thing. At the outset this summer, I was imagining that rereading these volumes would be a kind of escape from the news that we find it so difficult to ignore and get away from the threats to our democracy, from Gaza and Ukraine, the daily assaults on the rule of law, and so on. But I discovered before long that far from being an escape, which it was in some degree from the daily news, I was at the same time being given a window into some deeper ways of understanding not only what's been going on in our nation and in the world, but also understanding how ordinary folks, that's most of us, right? How ordinary folks might choose to and be able to be present in the midst of it all and to respond to all that's going on. So bear with me. I'll tell you a little bit about hobbits, first of all. Within the first few pages of The Hobbit, we learn from Tolkien, our narrator, that hobbits, well, they're about half the height of humans. They're small, and they love their comfortable routines, from their pipes to their meals and much else. When the wizard Gandalf knocks on the door of Bilbo, a hobbit, Bilbo's hobbit hole, saying that he is, quote, Gandalf says, looking for someone to share in an adventure, Bilbo wants to have none of it. He's puffing on his beloved pipe, and Bilbo says, we are plain, quiet folk, and I have no use for adventures. Nasty, disturbing, uncomfortable things make you late for dinner. And then, over the course of these 4 volumes, hundreds and hundreds of pages, and the movies, which I think maybe I saw one of them, we learn how 5 diminutive, comfort-loving hobbits, Bilbo in The Hobbit, and then Frodo, Merry, Sam, Pippin, and Pippin in The Lord of the Rings, how they diminutive hobbits rose to heroic heights in the midst of all sorts of dangerous, life-threatening adventures, surprising themselves and just about everyone else, all the non-hobbits, too, including the wizard Gandalf, even though it was he who had started the whole thing by encouraging and getting Bilbo to go on this initial adventure. All as throughout, the hobbits never stopped yearning for the comforts and pleasures of their home, back in Hobbiton, their simple lives. Here's one moment in the tale that suggests how it seems to me these hobbits have become adept, pretty much in spite of themselves, at looking both ways, as I've been describing it, and then living accordingly. Halfway or so through Lord of the Rings, Merry and Pippin, two of the hobbits, have been part of the conquest of Isengard, which had been under the control of one of the evil powers, Sauron. Well, they've been part of this conquest, a violent episode, and afterwards they were discovered by Gandalf, remember the wizard, and others of the so-called Fellowship of the Ring. Merry and Pippin were found lounging around at the gate to Isengard, smoking their pipes, enjoying the day. Well, then, after stories were shared back and forth, since they've been separated, back and forth as to what everybody had been doing, what they've been experiencing, and so on, Merry and Pippin showed everybody to the larder, which they, of course, had discovered, and they together shared a wonderful meal, and more stories shared, company, so on, among friends. Looking, I suppose we could say, and living both ways, right? And they just come from this battle, risking their lives, and they knew that more dangers awaited, maybe death even awaited, but they used this interlude that they knew that would be temporary to settle into the comfort and pleasure of this good meal shared among friends. This reminds me of a Buddhist story some of you may be familiar with, of the fellow who is hanging by a vine from the edge of a cliff, and at the bottom, underneath him, is a hungry tiger, and above him is another hungry tiger. If that weren't bad enough, chewing into the vine were two little mice. But the man spies a strawberry growing from the vine, takes it, eats, tastes, enjoys. How sweet. Both ways. Go back to the hobbits. Does the example of the fictional hobbits in their time of struggle against destructive powers of evil help us to see how we, in our time, might more safely live our personal lives through this world of joy and woe woven fine, as well as safely, even with some greater measure of equanimity, live through these days of worry? So many worries and concerns for the fate of immigrants, for the lives of those in the midst of war and famine, these days of divisive rhetoric and political violence, days of deep concern for the fate of our great American multicultural experiment in democracy, not to mention for the fate of the earth and all life as the atmosphere heats and the oceans rise. So does the example of the hobbits in the midst of their struggle against evil powers, does it help us in our time? I think it does. Speaking personally, just about every day, my soul needs a daily time of reflection in the comfort of my easy chair. It's right over there, surrounded just outside. You can see some of it through the windows of our backyard, these beautiful trees, surrounded by green these days and soon multicolored leaves, embraced by beauty, in other words, all while sipping my favorite tea, a healthier habit, it seems to me, than the hobbit's pipe. But in any case, my soul needs this daily time of reflection and peace. But at the same time, I know that to be fully human, to be a full participant, well, in our democracy, in life and daily life, in the pageant of life on Earth, our dear Earth, I also need to pay attention to the news. The hobbits, after all, have been living a life in seclusion from the powers of evil that have been gathering around on their borders, east and north and so on. But they hadn't been aware of any of that because others have been fighting the battles to begin with. But eventually the hobbits had to realize this. They learned that there were dark powers at work that would destroy their little world of comfort and ease unless some courageous souls, including hobbits, rose to the occasion, became heroic in spite of themselves. Now, all this applies not only to the wider world in which we live, and most of us are not going to live on the grand stage of of single-handedly saving our democracy or saving the earth. We're part of these large teams of people working in those directions. But all this applies as well, in any case, to our personal lives, looking both ways, helping us to live through our personal challenges and sorrows with a greater measure of equanimity, even a sort of heroism. We've seen this as we see a friend or a neighbor rise to meet some personal challenge they, a day or a week or a month before wouldn't have thought they could, in ways that they wouldn't have thought they could, a kind of heroism. As for me, I remember the day so clearly that my father died almost 40 years ago, and then 25 years or so later, when my mother died. I remember those days so clearly. Both days I was just about overcome with grief and tears. Most of you know the depth of grief in one context or way or another. Yet also on both days, I very soon also felt embraced by love. The love of my wife, Susan, our kids, our wider families, caregivers, nurses who were nearby. Grief and love woven together. Remember Blake said, underneath every sorrow, grief and pine is woven of, but I got to get the words right. I'll look back here. Right, under every grief and pine runs a joy with silk and twine. Sometimes that joy is it's just about love, right? Now, I could have chosen to push away the love. We do that and let myself just wallow ever more deeply in the grief. Or I could have chosen to pretend that everything was really pretty much okay. After all, everyone dies. My parents had lived long lives, no need for too many tears. Or I could choose to accept it all, the depth of grief and the embrace of love. All of it, all woven together, helping me safely, you might really say, to go through the days that were ahead. I was in greater equanimity. Yes, the grief. Yes, the love holding me up, holding us all up together as we moved through that time in our family. Looking both ways, eyes wide open, present to the fullness of whatever is happening in our lives, looking always, actually, this way and that way, up and down. What if you're so taken with the task in front of you and you don't look up? And as a singer-songwriter, Mark Arelli, who we love here in the East, he wrote a song, I think he called Look Up or Looking Up. Look up to see angels, using that metaphorically, of course, angels, our better nature, God, however we might describe that, but there are powers that can help us. Or we're looking not only outwardly at what's going on, but looking within at our own inner resources, or the God within, as the Quakers put it. So looking always, they remind us that we're part of this tapestry of life. We're all connected. This extraordinary tapestry. And then the compassion can be evoked, can be awakened, compassion of the Buddha or Jesus in our own hearts. And that can evoke our inborn natural desire to help and heal in whatever ways we're able to help and heal our dear ones, our neighbors, our democracy. We're holding up a sign in a demonstration. We're helping to heal our democracy. This might be a rebirth of democracy. Somebody in the Joys and Sorrows said, glimmers of hope. That comes. Hope is a verb, Hope is a verb. We can help and heal, whether our neighbors, our democracy, our dear earth home. So remember, as I close, remember, hobbits were small. They loved their food and drink, their comfort, their peace. We may feel small, and we probably all love our food and drink and our comfort and our peace. So they were much like us. But they rose to the heroism demanded by the times in which they lived. Nourished by beauty, then, nourished by love. Dr. King called love the unifying principle of life. I love that. So nourished by beauty, nourished by love, we can, too, rise to some level of heroism, equanimity, surely, whether to meet a personal crisis or challenge, or to meet the crises of our times in which we live. We can, we see it, we do it, we live it. Looking both ways, living both ways. So may it be.
The morning offering will now be given and received. Please remember, we are a self-sustaining congregation and provide all financial resources for our many ministries. We recognize the spiritual value of generosity and invite you to participate. If you're viewing the service remotely, please use one of the methods shown on the screen. And thank you. Our thanks for all the gifts given and received for the work of this community. Please stand in body or spirit and sing the closing hymn, Building a New Way, number 107.
We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. Hate and greed and jealousy. We are working to be free. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. Start with love, that is the seed. We can feed our every need. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Without these, the world will die. Peace and freedom is our cry.
As we prepare to extinguish the chalice, let us recite the valediction. we extinguish the flame of this chalice, and we know that the light of truth and love and the warmth of this community go with us until we meet again. Now let us form a circle and join hands. Ken?
And before I say the benediction, every time I'm here, I'm so impressed by the slides that you all find. This is a beautiful slide for the theme of the service, all the people and nature and everybody connected one to another. I want to put in a plug. I imagine most of you are worried about the climate and being climate activists. If you're an elder and want to be involved in the way that I am with Elders Climate Action, you can find the website and be alerted to ways you can contribute to healing our climate, our earth. So awakened in every way to the beauties of this earth, awakened to the love we share in a circle such as this, awakened to the goodness and kindness that is in our lives in the world with abundance, though too often obscured by other things, but awaken to the best within us and awake to all the challenges we find before us. May we make of our lives, aware of the blessings of our lives, may we make of our lives a blessing to others, a blessing to all life. May it be so this day and every day as we walk through our lives on this dear earth. So may it be, and amen.